What do you think of Ben Bernanke?
You know, I think he's doing a good job.
The engine of inflation.
As an expert on the causes of the Great Depression.
Do you think he should be reappointed?
I do.
Is that it is an institution that is not in their best interest.
And I think it's important to have the Fed as an independent agency.
What the Federal Reserve System is a cartel.
Joining us now is Mr. Christopher Marola. Chris, his business is Red Momentum Strategies. His website is redmomentum.com. He is a consultant extraordinaire to people currently holding or hoping to hold offices primarily, almost exclusively in the Republican Party. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alan. How are you?
I'm always doing well, especially when I'm talking to you. So what you got on your mind? And we've had a lot of news over the weekend, start the week. What you got?
Well, sure, there is a lot of news. They're talking about the immigration bill. There's all these different things, but I don't want us to forget about the dangers of gun control and how the Obama administration and the Democrats are trying to take our right to keep and bear arms away. And I'd like to remind everyone to see a video, if possible. They can just go to YouTube and look it up themselves, where a number of African-American conservatives got together recently and held a press conference and spoke of the history of gun control and the fact that the origins of gun control are rooted in racism and bigotry, that all gun control laws that were passed in the South were passed, and this is where gun control began, they were passed in order to limit and curtail the freedoms of the freed slaves now that they, of course, had slavery been outlawed and abolished. Thanks to Abraham Lincoln and the Republican Party, they had their freedom, and so gun control was used to limit and, again, curtail the freedom of these newly freed African-American people.
I have heard that. I'm not all that familiar with it. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, actually, in the video, they talk about this, and if you take a look at the video that was passed along, you can take a look at it in full. It was a long video. You probably didn't catch all the clips that were in it. But if you get a chance to see the whole video, you'll see what was discussed. The actual quote by Chief Justice Taney, who was the Chief Justice that argued the Dred Scott decision that somehow upheld this idea that slavery was somehow okay, in his writing, in his decision, he actually admitted that, and this video demonstrates this, that if we allowed these, he was saying, Taney was, that if we allowed these African-American people to have freedom, then they would soon take up arms. And he said, we can't allow that to happen. So they make it very clear that they were afraid that these people who were slaves would become free and then take up arms and protect their property and their lives. And that was one of the reasons why they didn't want to give them freedom.
Hey, for the record, I read and look at everything you send me, but keep in mind the listeners haven't seen the video, so that's why I asked you that question.
Oh, no problem. I'm sure you've seen the video, but it was quite long, so it's very possible you may have missed a couple of clips that I'm discussing. That's why I wanted to reiterate those points. But whether you saw them or not, you're right. It's a good idea for the listeners to know what's really going on. So what ends up happening is there's two very interesting points. The KKK was started by Southern Democrats to punish and kill not only African-American people who had become free, but also to punish any white Southerners who were helping them. So the Southern Democrats started the KKK, but guess who started the NRA? It was basically Christian conservatives, the people who are always so demonized as being the religious right by the media. They're the ones that started the NRA, and they did it for the purpose of arming and teaching these newly freed slaves how to defend their rights to life, liberty, and property. The NRA was started for that purpose by those evangelical Christians that the media loves to hate.
Chris, we had at the end of the first hour, Dan Holler with Heritage, and I believe you and Dan have at the very least gotten to be email buddies. He went over 8 things that were in that gun legislation that's being pushed along by the Senate. It's really breathtaking, the ignorance of some of these politicians.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And they just sign on to whatever the think tanks tell them. I think we spoke about that recently when I was sharing how a congresswoman from Colorado, Diana DeJette, didn't even know that magazine clips could be replaced. She thought once you blew through a magazine clip, you had to throw it away, and that would be the end of magazine clips. I mean, that was just absolute naivete, gullibleness, ignorance, and yet they're writing the laws. She was the co-sponsor of the gun control bill in the House, and she didn't know that once all the rounds had been fired in a magazine clip, that you could reload a magazine. Absolute just absurdity.
One of the news clips last week was Obama giving a speech, and he had talked about, he was doing his vilification of gun owners routine. And he said, a lot of these people think they're supposed to have weapons to protect themselves against the government. And I'm thinking, isn't that what our founding fathers said? That is the final reason was to protect us from them?
Yeah, exactly. This is a point I make a lot. I have a lot of people who will tell me that, you're supposed to just compromise and get along with the Democrats. And I'm thinking, here's the problem with that argument. You're making the assumption that there's a middle ground between right and left and we can all coexist there. But the pendulum of society has moved 20 miles to the left. So if you say, let's meet somewhere in the middle, what you're actually doing is giving them 10 steps to the left instead of 20, but you're still embracing a leftist policy. The key to not compromising and not being an extremist, which is what they're so afraid of, is to hold fast to the Constitution. It's like what the Treasury agents do concerning money when they want to know the difference between a counterfeit bill and a real authentic dollar bill. They don't study all of the different counterfeits. They master their study of the one true bill, and they master their understanding of the one true bill so much so that they can determine what is an accurate and legitimate bill that has not been tampered with, and that they know what the standard is, and they don't deviate from it. And that's how we need to go at the Constitution. The Constitution is like that document or like that dollar bill that we must master our understanding of and say that anything that is not that standard is a counterfeit, and we say no to it. We can't compromise just to get along by allowing counterfeit bills in circulation just because we want to be civil. That's the argument of people who want us to compromise. Well, that counterfeit's so close to the original, just let it pass through. That's ultimately the argument that they're offering. No, we need to stick to the standard, and the standard in this country is still the United States Constitution.
Are you familiar with the North Korean supernote?
No, what is the North Korean supernote?
The North Korean supernote is a counterfeit $100 bill that is actually so pristine it is better than our current 100, and I hate to call them dollars, the 100 Federal Reserve monetary unit note.
Right.
Because, it's just part of their economic warfare. Sometimes when they need money, they print up these perfect $100 bills. They're using, the same printing press. Apparently, they've got the same paper, the same ink. It is an exact match. In fact, they say now one way they can tell it's a North Korean supernote is that it is of slightly higher value than the paper that's being put out by the Treasury on behalf of the Federal Reserve.
Isn't that amazing? Well, at least there's a way to distinguish it from the original, which is still my same argument. There has to be a standard bearer, and we start with that standard bearer, and we stick to it. And in this case, it's the Constitution, and that's interesting that you would say that the dollar and its worth has been watered down, because many on the political left have watered down the meaning of the Constitution as well.
All right, well, now I got to be fair, I mean, the right's been watering that money down as well.
Say that again?
The right has watered it down quite a bit themselves.
Well, in all fairness, this is the system we're stuck with. I mean, you know, it was...
Hey, they can end the Federal Reserve System anytime they can push it through Congress. When they had the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives, they could have ended this system. Hey, Chris, we're coming out on the end of the break. Or coming
all right.
Hey, it's always a pleasure. I will talk to you tomorrow. This is Chris Marola, redmomentum.com, Red Momentum Strategies. Chris, it's much appreciated every time we speak.
Oh, absolutely. I enjoy it as well. Take care, Alan.
You too. This is Alan Butler, and you are listening to Butler on Business. We'll be back on the other side of the break, but in the meantime, enjoy the Loving Spoonful.